The victim hangs up the phone and dials, and they insist they've heard dial tones and believe they have called 911. I don't want to speculate about on the technical aspect of this, but I will say that in certain circumstances, it is possible that if the call taker or the call maker has not hung up the phone, one could be led to believe they're making an outgoing call when in fact they're still on the same line.
Are there specific demographics that are being targeted, like the elderly?
Not that I'm aware of, no. It appears to be a true mass marketing scheme in the sense that there are certainly hundreds of thousands of attempts that have been made. That said, as I stated, there are some victims that believe that their financial information was already in the possession of these people. It's difficult for us to say whether in fact that was the case, or perhaps they have also been the victim of some very clever social engineering. So I'm throwing it out there that they at least have that belief that the person who's speaking to them already has their financial information.
Detective, $5.1 million is a large sum of money. Can you just go over where the money came from? Is it credit card money? Is it straight out of their account? How do they?
I can't get into those details. It is a significant amount of money, and I've certainly seen a lot of that, but that is an excessive amount, yes.
How does it break down between the 5 victims?
I'm not going there.
Can you say what the most amount is?
No, I can't get into the details. There's 5.1 million with 5 victims that we're aware of. That's as far as I can go.
Is this something that all happened like in the one event, like phone call to phone call to phone call, or were they receiving further calls in the days that followed?
There are follow-up phone calls, and one thing that I would add, there is an effort to convince the victim of the need for secrecy. They are persuaded that there is an ongoing bank investigation involving perhaps a complicit employee, and this is again a fabrication, but that's what they're persuaded. So they're persuaded there's a need for secrecy, and they will keep the victims, the calls ongoing for several days. And I believe the reason for doing so is to ensure that no efforts are made to recover the money whilst it's being withdrawn from wherever it's been sent to. Typically, when wire transfers are made, it's difficult to move that money along quickly. So it has to be withdrawn in increments. So the longer they can keep the victim holding that belief that there is this ongoing investigation, the greater the culprit's chance is to obtain all of the money that has been sent abroad.
So the money that is transferred, though, on day one?
Not necessarily, no. I wouldn't say that. It could take several days.
But no, did they initiate a transfer on day one?
Certainly attempts are made. I'm not going to get specific about when they were made.
I know you said you didn't have much technical information, but would leaving your phone hung up for a longer period of time initiate a full disconnect service with the caller that's calling in?
Well, I want to be careful at the point. The one common component to this is that all the victims were using home-based phones. That's the first thing. So we're not talking about a mobile phone. We're talking about home-based. My understanding is that the phone companies have varying features when it comes to that hanging up and disconnecting. I've heard numbers ranging from 13 seconds to 25 seconds. I don't want to commit to any of those because I'm not sure if there's some others that it would take longer. Certainly, if you were in doubt about who was calling you, it might be a good idea to perhaps hang up, and if you have another phone line available, to make your own call to a number that you've already researched. That would be one way to cover that off. Certainly, I think if you hung up for a minute, you would probably be safe. But again, I don't know all the features that all the telcos use. It's possible that one could last longer than that.
Are there victims around the country and in different other? You say you're part of this coordinated effort with the FBI, with the United States government, RCP, whatever. Are there other victims around North America? Do we know where these are originating from?
Well, the strategic partnership, which is part of an investigating unit that I'm part of, they're partners with us throughout. But that said, this investigation that I'm detailing today deals specifically with Toronto victims. I believe, based on the investigation to date, that victims across Canada are being targeted.
Do you know possibly where these? Is this sort of another European or African, Nigerian kind of?
There is a foreign component to this investigation, but I'm not in a position to say where the calls are originating from.
Detective, can you talk about, you said there's 5 people that have built out this money, but how many calls have been put out? How many people have reached out to you about contacted by this?
Well, I said at the beginning it was an emerging scheme because this is actually fairly new to us. So I'm aware of the 5 Toronto occurrences. We're obviously hopeful that with this information that if others have been victimized, they'll come forward. I'm confident in saying that there are hundreds of thousands of attempts that have been made nationwide. But in terms of reporting of those incidents, we haven't been informed of anything beyond what I'm talking about.
Is it your belief at this point that there are more victims?
I believe it's quite likely, yes.
How do you get to hundreds of thousands of attempts?
Well, that's getting into the investigation. I can't go there.
You say you're onto these guys, like, are you getting close to them, like?
I'm not going to get into the investigation.
You alluded a little bit to this earlier, but in terms of just, we get calls into the newsroom on a weekly basis for various phone scams. How difficult is it to keep up with these evolving fraudsters, and kind of what's your strategy in terms of that?
That covers a lot of ground. These schemes, there's many variations, but that said, they all have something in common. One's not particularly harder than the other, so we keep up it as best as we can, but it's it's constantly changing.
So you said there's a foreign component to this, but is there also a domestic component? Are people here in Canada helping them out?
There is a foreign component, and there may be a domestic component as well, and that's about as much as I can say. Sorry, someone over there? This has been going on for 4 months that we're aware of.
Do all these victims have the same service provider?
There are different service providers.
Can you give us one nugget? One real good nugget? You're on these guys or whatever.
That's about as far as I can go.
So your main goal today is to prevent further victims and to prevent other victims?
Well, we definitely want to make the public aware that this is occurring, and hopefully we can prevent further victimization. And we're obviously hoping that victims who are people who have already been victimized by this and haven't reported it will come forward. I'm hopeful that if somebody is maybe in progress and considering following up on a similar event, that they contact us first.
How has this affected the lives of these victims?
Well, 5.1 is over 5 people is a significant amount of money, so I presume it's affected them adversely.
Is there any common theme between all of the victims in terms of age or gender or anything like that?
No.
All of that?
There's again, I'm dealing with 5 people, and I don't want to paint this all with a broad brush. I have no idea about the other victims that have been targeted and haven't reported yet, so I shouldn't really be going there.
There's a level of sophistication, like you mentioned phone screws, and that's really easy with an app. But everything else, from your experience, do you think these guys are technologically very advanced, like hackers or something? Or?
I certainly think at this point that based on the number of calls that we believe are being made, that they've employed technology that allows for robocalling and so on. How sophisticated you have to be to do that, I don't know. I think that you just subscribe to it. There's obviously they're pretty good pitchmen in terms of convincing the victims. The victims, I would add, they're not. They're all on the ball. They're not people that you would consider to be otherwise to be vulnerable to this sort of thing. So I'm assuming the pitch is pretty good.
You're saying robocalls. Are they robocalls that call it, or is it a live person that calls?
Well, they speak to a live person, but as you may or may not know, the technology employed for legitimate mass marketing purposes involves there is a possibility to call numbers, and then if nobody picks up, it just goes to the next caller until someone does pick up, and then you'll be connected to a live person. So I presume, based on the number of calls that we believe have been made, that that technology is likely being employed.
It's not a digitized voice or anything like that, like you get with some of the CRA scams.
I'm sorry?
It's not like a digitized voice. That
No,
you get with
they're
some of the-
speaking to a live person, a real person.
Detective, 5.1 million for 5 people is a pretty large number for a small amount of people. In your career working in fraud, what is that kind of range? It seems like
It's right up there. We've seen more, but that's definitely right up there. And for a mass marketing type fraud, yeah, it's high, very high.
At what point did these victims realize that they've been duped?
There was a significant lag in the reporting of the events after they occurred. So what that tells me is that it was obviously it was a very convincing pitch because they sent the money, and There may be embarrassment involved, or they just may be in denial, but there was a lag between the reporting of the event and when the events actually occurred.
What kind of lag, how long?
I don't want to go there.
But you said this has been going on for 4 months, like, did the reports come in 4 months, or do you think it started?
Based on our investigation, I can say that I believe this has been going on for at least 4 months. I really don't want to go any further than that.
Is there a level of common sense involved here? I mean, if you're getting a call asking you to transfer money, I mean, most people would just hang up the phone.
It's easy to say that in hindsight. What I would say again is that the victims come across, these are educated, credible people. One thing you'll find in common with victims of this type of offense is that it's often just about what's going on in their life at that particular time that made this whole thing make sense to them. And maybe at another time, they wouldn't have fallen victim to it, but in this case, they did.
5 million over 5 people. Are they targeting people that they already know might have greater financial means, or are they targeting everyone across the economic scale?
We've considered everything. It may well be that this is a broad scheme directed at a large number of people, but they may also have a short list of persons they're targeting. I don't know the answer to that question, though.
But to come up with 5 million with just 5 people is pretty good odds.
It could be a lucky shot on their part, or it could be that they, you know, the suggestion is out there that some of them at least had banking information associated to their victims. But that doesn't mean they actually had it. It could mean that the victims were duped into providing it. It's really hard for us to make that claim. So it is possible that there's several components. There could be a mass marketing side to it, but they could also be focusing on certain individuals, and we just don't have enough information right now to make that determination.
Have you spoken to, I know you said this is across Canada, have you spoken to other jurisdictions that are, I know that the RCMP is involved, just to find out if it's happening in other regions across Canada?
We've spoken with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. I believe it's relatively new to them as well. This type of scheme has occurred in the United Kingdom. There's a history of it there, less so now.
How long ago?
Good question.
Is there any recourse for any of these victims?
There may be. The investigation is occurring here. There's another country involved, and they're making inquiries as well. So you never want to say never, but realistically, when that money is gone, it doesn't take very long to unload it. So, you know, recovery is usually not realistic in these types of investigations.
One of my colleagues asked about service providers, phone companies. What about banking institutions? Is it the same bank across the board? We have no information to indicate that any particular bank is targeted.
And the only means of communication is over the phone, or text messages, emails, anything like that?
Strictly over the phone.
Always a landline.
I beg your pardon?
Always a landline.
It's a landline that the victims are being called on, yes.
Have you had any communication with the actual 5 big banks in Canada?
Any investigation involving this type of offense, we're always talking with the banks, yes.
What have they said about it?
I can't get into the details of the investigation.